doesn't make sense. Um, but I mean, even with that, there are some theories out there, quantum theory and things like that, that just say, nature is unpredictable, and things happen. So maybe on some sort of quantum theory of mechanics or anatomy or whatever, maybe indeterminism is right. The last thing he talks about is his theory of agency, which is kind of strange. He talks about essentially sometimes our behaviors are caused and sometimes they're not. And sometimes we're actually, ourselves can be the cause of our behaviors. But he says we really don't even want to use the word cause in this sense, because if it's the case that human beings can have free will and be the cause of their own behavior, we're the only things in the universe that have this particular property of both being a subject and making things happen. So, and he says maybe we don't even want to call it cause, maybe we want to call it originate, maybe we want to call it initiate, something like that. He doesn't want to say cause, but there's some sort of agency, I guess is the right word, that we're actually making things happen. And that's sort of where he ends on that. He tries to sort of, I guess, get out of the whole like soft determinism thing a bit by saying that we do have this theory of agency, but he doesn't do much in fleshing that out, in my opinion. But it's an interesting theory. Just like in most of philosophy, right? I mean, you examine the issue and you pose problems, but when it comes to actually presenting your own position, it can be quite difficult. So that was Freedom and Determinism. The second article we looked at was by Bertrand Russell, and it was on truth and falsehood. And the main two things that I want you guys to take away from this thing on truth and falsehood are the two types of theories of truth that he talks about. The first is the correspondence theory of truth, and the second is the coherence theory of truth. And so before we talk about correspondence, we have to talk about the distinction between truth and a fact. And a fact is just the way things are in the world. You can even just take the term fact away from it and just say the way things are. That things are as they are. And it involves no human judgment, and it involves no beliefs, it involves nothing like that. It's just objects, and they're just existing the way that they're existing. And those are the facts. Truth comes in when we make judgments or we form beliefs about the way things are in the world. So on the correspondence theory of truth, something is true is if the beliefs or the judgments that we form in our minds match up to the way that things are in the world. So if our beliefs map onto the facts in the world, the way things are, then something is true. And if it doesn't, then it's false. And that's why Russell says that there's a duality to truth. Because if we're making a judgment about something, about the way things are in the world, we can either be right or we can be wrong. And if we're right, then there's truth. And if we're wrong, then it's false. So he talks about the three characteristics of truth. He says that it has to admit of truth and falsehood. It has to be based on belief, because if you don't have a belief or a judgment, all you have are the facts. And the last thing he says is that truth depends upon the world or external factors in order for truth, which is actually a very contentious claim in philosophy. Some people believe that it's our internal mechanisms that makes things true, but Russell he's a proponent of the correspondence theory. Therefore, he thinks there are things that are in the external world that actually make things true, and because of that third condition, makes him an advocate of the correspondence theory of truth, which, as I just mentioned, is where your beliefs have to match up with the facts of the world. So the second theory that he talks about, but he kind of dismisses, is the coherence theory of truth. And the coherence theory of truth, essentially something is true on the coherence theory of truth if it's consistent with all of your other beliefs that you have. And a couple of examples that we talked about with this were religions and science, scientific theories in some way. On Newtonian mechanics, the belief that time and space are relative, as Einstein came up with, was wrong. It was not. It was false, because it didn't match up with the other beliefs and the other truths or theories that were in Newtonian mechanics. Therefore, what we had to do in that situation was we basically got rid of Newtonian mechanics, or took maybe some useful things from it, and we adopted a new theory, a new scientific theory based on Einstein's theory of relativity. And the same things happen with quantum theory now. So as long as it fits within that schema, then it's true. But if it doesn't fit within that, then it's false. So that's essentially, and Russell, of course, makes a couple of objections to that. He says that first, you can who's to say that you can't have multiple coherent stories about the way things are? But that doesn't seem to be what we're going for when we're saying truth. It seems if you say, for instance, you have two coherent theories, and you want to say that they're both true, but within both of those theories, you have one belief in one set of theories that is, the sky's blue, and in the other, coherent story, you have something that says the sky is not blue. So you can't have both of those together because that's a contradiction. So it seems like when you have all these multiple sort of stories that just hang together coherently as your basis of truth, you're going to run into some serious problems. So that's the coherence theory. And then, as he said, and as I just pointed out, even the idea of coherence depends upon another truth, which is the law of contradiction. Because for something to be coherent means that it has to be consistent with something else. So he gives the example of the birch tree, something about a birch tree, right? This tree is a birch, okay? And if you have another statement within your system of beliefs that says this tree is not a birch, then you have a contradiction, and those two aren't coherent. But the only way that you can know that they're not coherent is to have some law of non-contradiction, which tells you that you can't have both a statement that says this tree is a birch and this tree is not a birch. So you're already assuming a certain type of truth before you even get coherence off the ground. So that's Russell's argument against that. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for this week. If you guys have any questions, just shoot me an email. Good job on the presentations. I've been enjoying those, and look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.